If you ever feel out of control around food, you're not alone, and you're in the right place to learn practical, no-nonsense information about why you binge and how to stop. Binge eating does not mean that something is wrong with you. It's a natural but primitive brain response that you can correct. If you're ready for change, sign up for the Brain Over Binge self-paced online course for less than $20 per month. And if you feel you need personalized support, we also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. To learn more, go to brainoverbinge.com/subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple, brain-based approach to ending binge eating. I'm Katherine Hansen, your host, and I'm happy to be back for another show. Before I get started, I want to mention that I was recently notified that episodes 1 and 2 of this podcast are not available on Apple right now, and I'm in the process of figuring out why this is occurring because those are two important shows that contain some of the basics of this approach, and I hope it will be fixed soon. But if you're new here and you're wanting to go back and listen to those earlier shows, you can go to brainoverbinge.com/BOB podcast, and all of the shows are there. I've also checked a few podcast apps that are not Apple, and episodes 1 and 2 are there as well. So I apologize for the inconvenience of needing to go elsewhere if you are an Apple Podcast user, but at least this gives you a temporary solution to hearing episodes 1 and 2. Today is Recovery Stories Part 2. I'm in the process of interviewing people who have found help in the Brain Over Binge approach and who have made some amazing changes in their lives to take control and end binge eating. In part 1, I interviewed our Brain Over Binge coach, Julie Mann, which was such a helpful conversation, so I encourage you to go back and listen to that as well if you have not yet. And in each of the remaining shows in this Recovery Stories series, I'm going to share the stories of about 3 to 4 people, and I know you're going to find them very inspiring. My hope is that hearing their unique experiences will help you realize that you are not alone, and will also spark some of your own insights and ideas that you can use in your own recovery. Today, you'll hear from Maribel, Danielle, and Michele. I love talking to each of them, and I know you'll love listening to what they shared about their own journeys. The recordings are from Zoom calls just in their homes and not using any sort of professional podcast technology, so realize that the audio quality isn't always going to be perfect, but I believe that everything is certainly clear enough and that their stories will really make a difference for you. So I'll start with Maribel, and then Danielle and Michele's stories follow directly after that. Thank you, Maribel, for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you. I'm actually really happy to be here and be able to share my experience.
Yeah, it's just, I feel like it takes a lot of courage to do that. So I just want to applaud you for that. And I know the listeners will appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So first, let's just start with introducing kind of how you got into an eating disorder. You know, what was that struggle like for you?
I think that as a teenager, I was never very comfortable with my body, but it was like a normal teenager stuff. Then I started college, and by the end of my career, like the last year of college, like I had more free time. So I was like, okay, I'll just start a diet now that I have more energy to focus on that. So I joined the gym and just started dieting, like not very strict. I actually turned my eating patterns like into healthier ones. But then I started counting calories. That was like the breaking point, I think. I started getting obsessed with that. And I spent almost 9 months doing that. I lost a lot of weight. I actually lost my period. My hair was falling out. And I was like nervous all the time and not being able to sleep. And actually I started therapy because I wasn't being able to sleep. That was the first problem. Actually, now I know what happened. At the time, I didn't understand what was going on. But the thing is that I was so like in a caloric deficit that my body was just craving for food all the time. I was thinking about food all the time. Yeah. The more I thought about food, the more it concerned me. So the more I would restrict myself, something like what happened to you. And well, once I gave into my first urge, it was like the monster was unleashed. So when that happens, of course, due to the fear of weight gain, I tried to compensate. I wasn't able to throw up after binging. So I started dieting like very restrictly the next couple of days, exercising a lot. And I started using laxatives. And I was like, I don't know, taking laxatives 3 times a day. So it was like crazy. Yeah, all my digestive system is still completely messed up because of that. But yeah, well, that was my experience, and I knew that something was wrong by the end of the year. I started dieting like in February of 2018. And by the end of 2018, also I was finishing my career. And I think that because I needed to be very focused on studying to sit for my last exam. I wasn't able to put that much effort into suppressing those urges to binge. And I didn't have enough time to compensate for the binges, so I started gaining weight. I don't know if you have any questions so far.
I mean, I appreciate you sharing. I think a lot of people can relate to sort of getting into dieting, just thinking, oh, I'm just going to lose a little weight. It's no big deal. And then before you know it, you're in this full-blown eating disorder. I mean, I just think it happens to so many people.
So I was like desperate because I didn't know what was going on. I was like eating these massive amounts of food, and I felt like I couldn't stop myself. So after I gained most of the weight back, I found a YouTube video. I don't even remember who was. It was a guy talking about how your book helped him overcome his binge eating disorder. And so I said, okay, I'll try this. Thank God my mom always encouraged me to learn English and study. So I was able to go through the book like with no problem. It was very simple. I started listening to your podcast, and then it was, oh, this is easy. I'll just try this because, in therapy, they would tell me that it's something that I was trying to compensate, like emotions, or that I was using my binge eating to cope with certain things in my life. And I was like, oh my God, I thought in my head, I have a good life. I had a good job. I have a lot of friends. I have this amazing family. And what the hell is going on? I mean, I am very lucky. So, of course, I have issues like everyone, but it's not like I felt there was something deeper. So when I read your book, I had that aha moment where I knew that it wasn't beyond the main problem, which was binge eating. So, okay, I started applying the 5 component, and it worked for a little while. And then I started binge eating again. I had like 3 relapses, and then I noticed what was going on, which was the problem. That when I got better, I started dieting again. And I started not counting calories. Well, I had one time that I started counting calories again, but then basically I would just restrain food, like have very little amounts of food each meal and try to control it too much, get nervous when I had to go to social events because I didn't know what I would eat. And then that would backfire into binge eating on the weekends, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think that's something that holds a lot of people back, that slipping back into dieting. Do you feel like it was sort of a gradual thing for you, that you would eat enough and then you'd kind of start restricting again gradually?
Yeah. Basically, I was caught up in this kind of circle of recovery and relapse because it was like, okay, I binged. So now I know that I have to start eating adequately again, and I don't have to restrict myself. I would do that like for 1-2 weeks. The urges would just go away, and then I'll start dieting again because I would fear of the weight gain and not feel comfortable with my body. So that was the main reason. And I would diet like for a week, and then I would binge it again, and then start the circle all over.
I think it would be helpful for people to hear, like, how did you eventually talk yourself into eating enough on a consistent basis?
Okay. Yeah, I think that I just had to focus on the main goal because I was actually talking to my boyfriend the other day, and I told him that I used to think about recovery as a way of finally losing weight. That was like the main thing that backfired. And I just noticed that I had to take losing weight out of the table, like forever. He was like, you don't have to diet ever again. So I think that would also help me not to overeat, because I was also overeating due to the fear of restricting in the future. But I think the body acceptance is like one of the main things that helped me going through that. And therapy also helped me, because therapy wasn't able to help me end the binge eating. It didn't. But actually, when I go to my therapist, sometimes he just like sleeps a little thought about that my binging was due to some emotional thing, and I'm like, no, wait, no, no, that's not correct. But he helped me a lot with body acceptance and understanding that I'm more than my weight, and then that helps me stop dieting. And of course, I find it so much easy to fight those urges to diet more than my urges to binge. So I know if I don't diet again, I'm okay.
I think it's really insightful that you realized that you were seeing recovery as a way to lose weight. And I do think that's kind of a common thing in people. And for you to be able to insightfully see that in yourself and then realize that recovery is about so much more. And I want to get into that. Like, how has ending the binge eating, how has it improved your life in ways that have nothing to do with weight?
Actually, I'm left with a lot of things to deal with right now. But I mean, ending the habit just helps me get focused on other things, in other problems, basically. But my life hasn't improved that much besides that. It's not the butterfly tail. But now I just have a lot of mental space to deal with other things, which are good. Some are bad. But now I know that anything life throws at me, I don't have to binge over it. And that's like such a relief mentally. My sleep is better. My social life is better because I'm not worried about eating like, quote unquote, a trigger food, because I know that even if I eat them, I don't have to binge over them. So, and basically just having a lot of mental peace around food, knowing that I have control, that I have the tools to resist those urges, and now they don't feel that strong anymore. I don't feel like I have to fight them.
And how long did it take for you to kind of get to that point where you feel like you don't have to fight them anymore and you feel like they're faded and you kind of feel confident in your recovery?
Basically, I will have to say like over a month that I'm like very sure that they have faded away. But a month ago, I had a very strong urge to binge, and I kind of started believing what it was saying to me. And I don't know if I binged. It's like, I don't know. I think I overate, and I would listen to these voices that were saying like, okay, you do this to cope with this that is happening to you, you know? But then I noticed what was happening, and so I stopped myself.
I think it's great that you realize that the urges can still pop up, especially if you haven't been binge free, for really, I mean, how long have you been binge free? About 10 months?
I think a year. Maybe.
A year. Okay. Yeah. And even at that point, like, it's possible for an urge to still pop up. It's possible for your brain to sort of remember an old pattern, but you don't have to make it mean anything. You don't have to think, oh, this is because I'm really diseased or because I really need to cope. You can just say, okay, that's just junk from my brain, and move on.
Yeah. That the last time it was something like that. It felt strong. And I remember saying to myself, okay, I don't have to fight this. I just have to let it be. And that helped me a lot. Not get caught up in the feelings of the urge.
Yeah. And that you even, had an episode of overeating and not spiral into full-blown binges again. Like no one eats perfectly. Everyone has times where they eat. I remember thinking when I would eat more than I kind of planned after recovery, I'd be like, was that a binge? But I realized that if I had to ask myself, then it wasn't a binge, because,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Like my binges were unmistakable. They were painful. They caused so many consequences. So it's very different than overeating.
Yes, of course. You saying that makes me feel a little better. Because sometimes it's not that easy to, like when you're caught up in the moment, it's like, did I follow the urge or not? Or did I just overeat to like calm it down? I remember when I was like binge eating like massively, I would say like, okay, just a little bit to calm the urge, and I would explode like like crazy. That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, totally. And if you have an urge, it's still okay to eat something. It doesn't mean you follow the urge. It's just you're not following the urge with a binge.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes I have like cravings and I'm afraid that it's an urge. So I'm still practicing on that. But then I notice that I can eat a little bit and just move on.
Yeah, I think it's just not overthinking it. I think that if I would have, every craving I had, if I would have thought, oh, is this an urge? Am I following my lower brain? And I think I would have driven myself crazy. You're trying to dismiss the urges to binge. You're trying to not binge. You're not trying to eat perfectly.
Of course, yes. As that was something that would happen to me. And then I learned to control it and just be a little more free around food. And therapy also helped me with that. With just like, okay, don't overthink it. I mean, if there's delicious food, just eat it. And then I will just stick to your principles to help me not binge again or not following the urge and not go into a full-blown binge.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring up how therapy factored into your recovery as far as like helping you with some of the things that drove you toward dieting, like self-acceptance factors and also the accepting imperfection in your eating and things like that, that really, maybe my approach helped you with the binging and really getting tools for that, but you needed other things along with that, especially to prevent you from returning to dieting.
Yes, not just prevent me to returning to dieting, because I think that even if I felt like really bad with my body, I would never diet again because I just simply feel like I can't. Yeah. Now I have food in the table and I'm like, okay, I'm going to eat it. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I think we have a saying here in Argentina that when you burn with hot milk, you see a cow and you cry. It's like, I starved myself for so long that now thinking about doing it again is just, I don't want to do it. It makes me feel bad. I think I was left with a little bit of fear of hunger. And of course, that made me overeat for a while after I stopped binge eating. But now it's like I'm getting my hunger and fullness cues back. I just realized that it was maybe not me that had lost the hunger and fullness cues, but my brain. So I will be like, no, okay, I'm full. And actually it was my mind telling me, okay, you have to stop eating because you've had too much. And my stomach would still be like hungry. So when I started listening more to my body and not so much my mind, that helped me a lot.
Wow.
Like, okay, I'm full. And if I'm a little bit fuller than I would like to be, okay, then I'll wait until I'm hungry again to eat. For example, my boyfriend, he lives with me. He's a very good intuitive eater. And so it was really hard for me to see him have such a healthy relationship with food. And I was like, like a struggle to me sometimes. But then I just picked up what I was seeing with him, practicing the things that he was doing like spontaneously. And that helped me a lot. Like, don't depend on anyone to eat or not to eat, or not to compare your plate with other people, and not because I'm a girl, I have to eat less than he does, and those things.
Yeah, but having healthy role models is great. I mean, I think because if you feel so out of touch with your own hunger and fullness, it can help to see like what is a normal eater doing, and to sort of model that in a way that works for you, I think is super helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, trying not to think about weight when I had food in front of me. That's very important, because I remember that every time I would eat, I would be thinking, oh, it's too much, I'm going to gain weight, or it's too little, it's okay because I want to lose weight. And it made all these stressful situations around food that were not comfortable at all.
Yeah, that's really profound. I think disconnecting food and disconnecting your eating experiences from weight is so helpful. Gosh, because gives you the freedom just to sit down and eat without having to worry about, oh, what is this going to do to my weight? Because really, overall, each meal is not going to do anything to your weight. Your weight is going to kind of take care of itself when you're eating enough, when you're nourishing yourself. So
yeah, that's something I would say to me, like, okay, your body knows how to handle this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just it. And then of course I gained weight. Of course I did, because I was like tremendously underweight. And when I started recovering, I started also practicing CrossFit. So I gained a lot of muscle, and I'm still dealing with the idea of having a bigger body. But it's like, okay, your body needs this fuel for the activities that you're doing.
Yeah, it seems like you've really developed a healthy perspective about weight, about your appetite, hunger, fullness, nourishing yourself. I just think that's all really amazing. And I know it will be really useful for people to hear your story and your journey to get to this point.
Yes, of course. And it wasn't easy. I mean, I'm very perfectionist, so letting go of control was very hard for me. There was something in my mind at some point that people were like loving me because I was dieting.
Yeah, it's that distortion. And now, like without the eating disorder, you're open to finding the things that truly satisfy you, and you're open to loving yourself and having other people love you for who you are and not what you look like.
Of course. And I remember that I would just, I don't know, that I was kind of ashamed after the weight gain. So I didn't want to go out or start new activities due to being afraid of not being accepted. And then I learned that people don't care.
Yeah.
Just they don't care. So that actually also allowed me to start living my life and enjoying it in a different way, in a better, different way.
Yeah, that's absolutely wonderful. And, just to close out, I know you've given people plenty of inspiration, and I'm sure that everyone found this super helpful, but do you have any thoughts you'd like to leave people with?
Yeah. Well, that actually there's hope out there that your method really works. It's very easy to apply it, and it's super quick. The only thing that happens is that sometimes you may struggle with eating adequately, and that's like very important. You cannot fight the urges if you are restricting. And then the other thing is that stopping binge eating is not going to make your life better, like in the whole. It's not like you're going to find a boyfriend. Actually, I found my boyfriend while binging like crazy. Or, I don't know, be better at work. But it's going to give you the mental space you need to start working for those things that you want in your life. And that's invaluable too, because being caught up in the diet culture and eating disorders things are not very good. I mean, they take up a lot of space in your mind that you can use. And at the end of the day, people just don't care. Weight is not that important.
Yeah, exactly. And the things you have to try to do to control your weight and to control, restrict, really kind of turn you into a person that other people, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but other people don't really want to be around anyway.
Something like that happened to me.
Really?
I would be the girl that was always talking about weight loss and going to the gym and, oh my God, are you eating that? You know how many calories are in that food? And it was just like, I don't know. I was obnoxious. I don't know how my friends just stick with me. They never said anything, but my mom once told me like, oh, you used to be so annoying with that. Food was not the only thing you were talking about, but because I was like freaking hungry. So I was talking and thinking about food all the time.
And now your true self can shine through and all the other amazing things about you. And
of course. Actually, the other day I just had a really great experience because I love cooking. So I made a banana bread, and I made 2 banana breads, and I put one in the freezer. And when I went to the freezer to look for ice, I don't know, I remember, this has been here for 3 days.
Wow.
And I remember that, I don't know, a couple of 1 year and a half ago, I would have made the 2 banana breads and would like binge on them like crazy. So just forgetting that food was there in my house, it's like a really great experience.
Yeah, that's super inspiring when it's just not the first thought in your mind anymore.
Yeah. So it's like amazing.
Yeah.
Now I'm applying component 5.
Excited.
I'm excited.
Celebrating. Absolutely. Yeah. So we definitely celebrate with you. And thank you so much for coming on the show to share your story. It's been super helpful and inspiring.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine.
All right. Danielle is here to share her story. And Danielle, thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You also shared your story in the Brain Over Binge 2nd edition, and I just really appreciate you doing that. And what's so inspiring about you is that you've been binge free for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm. It's going to be 8 years next month.
That's amazing. When did it kind of start for you? When did your struggle with binging begin?
So before the binging started, I guess just the whole eating issues started with poor body image. And at that point, my eating was more on the orthorexia side. So like, it wasn't great, even though I thought it was at the time. But at that point, I was starting to undergo like very stressful situations with a roommate who we no longer speak anymore, which is for the better. But that was the time when the binging started. I felt very out of control around food, and especially like peanut butter. That was the main one. But I remember I'd be sitting in my apartment and I was in college. And so I was by myself most of the day when I wasn't in class. So it was very easy to go to the pantry and eat to make myself feel better. And at the time, like kind of what you echo in your book, like I didn't have any unresolved trauma and like, or any childhood issues like that. Like, yeah, my body image wasn't the greatest, but it really did feel like it was about the food and not some deeper meaning. Yeah. And so that was a part that I really struggled with, because all of the self-help things out there are focused on those underlying issues. So at that point, I was feeling very defeated, and at the same time also studying nutrition and had the interest in eating disorders. And so I went to an eating disorder conference to learn some more and found your book that was being sold there. And I read it a couple months later. And at that point, the animal brain was such a novel idea that it flipped a switch. And it's like, why hasn't anybody said this before?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the turning point.
Yeah, it's amazing. It seemed like it just gave you a sense of control from what you shared in the book, that you sort of didn't have that sense of control before. And then learning about the lower brain, the animal brain, you could really feel your control at every point in the process of your decision-making around food.
Absolutely. Because in the height of the binging, it's all those thoughts of like, why me? Why can't I stop this? Why is this happening? But then that mindset shift of, I'm the one doing the binging. I'm the one going to the kitchen. I'm the one eating the food. And so, yeah, a big shift in control at that point.
Yeah. Something I want to ask about, you mentioned earlier, like that it was easier just to eat to feel better. And that sometimes can echo the idea that, okay, eating is this thing that helps you cope and that helps you soothe emotions and things like that. And whereas my book really shows you that it's not, it's really this primal drive. You're eating because of the urges, not really because of the emotions. So were you able to sort of make that separation and realize that it wasn't like truly helping you feel better?
Yeah, I think so. And at this point, because it's almost 8 years, don't really remember that that time in my life, which is amazing to say, because it felt so all-consuming at the time. And now it's just like, yeah, that was a time in my life, but it's over.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard. Like, I obviously wrote everything down and I have, the books and things, but if it wasn't for that, it would be hard to remember. So I can totally relate to that. And I think that's also inspiring for people listening, that you do get to that point where you feel like, okay, this was just something in my past and I barely remember it.
Mm-hmm. And so at this point, I am a dietitian and I do work with people who have eating disorders. And a lot of times they are feeling helpless. And so trying to work with them and really show them that it's going to get better. Because sometimes that's the hardest part, that they don't feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. I'm sure that, having that struggle yourself, you're really able to relate to them. Do you use sort of the concepts of the animal brain and things like that to help with the people you work with?
I have. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people that I work with have tried so many different therapies, different coping strategies, different interventions. And so bringing in like this new idea, maybe not a new idea, but like not a common thing in the nutrition world, common practice. It's just a way for them to view the binges from a different perspective and kind of like take a step back from how deep into it they are at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure like from the nutrition perspective, as we both know, it's so important that you eat enough and that you don't restrict, and because that just drives the cycle, for yourself and others you work with. Like, what do you think was sort of the most helpful thing as far as encouraging yourself to not restrict, or helping other people you work with not to go down that path of dieting?
I don't know that I had this thought so much at the time, but one thing that I've been working with my clients that has been helpful is to point out that we have a lot of meals to eat in our future. roughly 3 times a day for like the rest of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a lot of brain power to be focusing on food if every meal you're scared that it's going to turn into a binge. And so really encouraging them to heal that relationship with food, because it doesn't have to be scary, and trying to get them to see that these foods that they're binging on, they might be thinking that they're unhealthy, but like whatever we eat, it's going to serve a purpose in our bodies.
Yeah, it's interesting. And especially with you coming from that history of orthorexia, to help people see that the foods are safe. And I think that can hold people back, just sort of that perfectionist mindset around food, the black and white thinking.
Mm-hmm. Definitely highlighting that the more we restrict something, the more it appeals to us and the more likely that we're going to binge on it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what is your sort of relationship with food like today?
So much better. Yeah. And like, I'm human. I'm not perfect. There are still days where like my body image isn't where I would like it to be, but like the disordered eating thoughts are gone. I feel much more flexible around food. I don't feel like I have to plan everything out. I can have multiple jars of peanut butter in my pantry and it not be a big deal.
Which again is so encouraging for people out there to know that, one day you will have food in your pantry and it won't even appeal to you. It can be kind of hard to believe when you're struggling with it, but I think you're definitely proof that it's definitely possible. And it's also, I think, helpful to hear that, okay, life isn't perfect. It's not like recovery is going to suddenly give you this wonderful body image and your life free of problems. So, I mean, it's great to hear you say that even though you do have struggles, binging doesn't have to be a part of your life.
Yeah. And it's been almost 8 years at this point, and I feel very, very strongly that like I am full on recovered from that. It's not a worry in the back of my mind that I'm going to fall back into those behaviors.
Yeah. And that's something I would like to ask you a little more about, because I think people do fear relapse. People do fear that it's going to pop up again. I mean, I definitely did for a little while after recovery. Was there a point where you felt confident, where those fears kind of went away? Like, how long was it after you stopped binging that you started to feel more confident in your recovery?
It took a little bit of time to get confident in it. One thing that helped me was to make like a countdown of it. Like, how many days has it been since I haven't binged? And at that point, it was like 3 days, a week. And then I would binge and it would go back down. And it was that cycle for, I don't know, a month. But then one day I binged and it just didn't happen again. And that countdown app kept going up and up and up. And I still have it. So it's a good reminder.
That's amazing. How long did it take, do you feel, for your urges to go away?
That's a good question. So at the point that I had like that last binging episode, the urges still came up, but I was very determined to break this cycle and focus on recovery and realizing that I'm in control. At that point, I feel like I still had binge urges for probably 3 months afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And that's good. I mean, that's great. I think it is so different for every person.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for me, which I've shared in the podcast, it was probably about 9 months, but really the 3 months was like when they were stronger, and then they tapered off. And by the time 9 months came around, it was just like these random thoughts. But yeah, I mean, that's super encouraging, because you get through that initial discomfort and then you get this whole new life.
Oh yeah. And a lot of my clients, like when we talk about how the binging makes them feel or like things like that, they say that they feel hopeless or dejected or embarrassed, and like they just want to feel proud of themselves. And so I don't disclose to them about my history really, but like I can passionately talk about it, and I can say like, well, you know what's going to make you feel proud of yourself? Overcoming binging. And I know it's going to be really hard while you're working on it, but you're going to look back in 5, 10 years, whatever, and think about all that you overcame and how awesome you are.
Yeah. And it helps, I think, in so many ways, because when you see that you can overcome that, you kind of feel like you can overcome anything.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
I think all of this has been super helpful. I congratulate you on your determination to recover and then just to be free of this for so long. And I know you'll go on to be free for the rest of your life, and helping others too is incredible. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to share with people who are out there and still struggling with this?
Taking it one day at a time. It gets better, but you're still fighting, and just keep on going.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for writing the book, because it has been life-changing, if you can't tell. And I share it with my clients today.
Oh, thank you so much. It means a lot. All right. So today we're talking to Michele, and Michele, I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. So the goal of this is just to really give hope. And we talked a minute before we started recording, and you said that's really your goal, is just to give hope to other people out there who are struggling. Maybe we could start by just telling about your journey with an eating disorder.
Sure. Well, I had a great childhood. But in high school, I went through like a slight depression, and I was with a friend and we decided to start working out together. And from there, I thought, well, heck, I'm going to go on a diet too. And I went on a diet, and I was very good at dieting, and I lost a lot of weight very quickly, which led into anorexia. So I was in anorexia for approximately, I'd say, 2 years. And somewhere within there, I started binging. I was a binge eater for 38 years.
That's a long time. Did you try forms of help? Did you go to therapy? Did you have treatment for that?
Yeah, I did. I went to a lot of therapists, and I went through I think about 7 treatments. Very discouraging. A lot of the counselors, they were even like, wow, you do that? You eat that much? They were like shocked.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. It's like feeling kind of like you're the only one. And even the experts you're going to are like, wow, you do that. I mean, maybe when you read my book, did it help to relate to my story and like that I was doing it too, and many other people as well?
Yeah, very much. What really resonated with me was I've always said through the years, and maybe started off a certain way, maybe it served a purpose, my eating disorder, but it went into a habit. Mm-hmm. And I used to say that to people all the time. I feel like this is a habit. But my therapist was saying, well, we need to look in your background more. Something's making you do this. And so it was very frustrating. So when I read the book, I was so excited because it was like, this is me. I can relate to this so much.
Yeah. So something you wrote, because you shared your story in the Brain Over Binge second edition, and you said you were able to, like, that was such an important insight for you to realize that it was a habit, that it was automatic, and that you were able to slow down your thoughts and actually challenge your lower brain. Can you kind of talk about that, sort of how that was for you? Was it immediate that you were able to see yourself as separate, or did it kind of take a while?
I guess I read the book once a long time ago, and I just didn't apply it. But about a year and a half ago, I got injured really bad, and I wasn't healing. And I knew it was because of my eating disorder. I was so inflamed. And so I reread the book, and that's when it really hit me. It was like, I got to start trying to follow these steps. So I challenging my thoughts, not even so much challenging, but listening to them, because before it was just so automatic. I wouldn't even listen to what was going on in my head. And I was able to just kind of let them float through me, and just kind of like what was in your book.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing, especially after, 38 years. Were there times that you still did act on them for a while, or was it kind of immediate that you were able to stop?
You know what? It was immediate.
Wow.
And which is crazy. I mean, I had no hope before this because I have tried so many times. I've hit rock bottom so many times. I was in pain, both mentally and physically. I mean, bad. And all of a sudden, it just like, I applied things, and for some reason, it just worked. And my urges went away, which is just so incredible.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think, gives hope to all the listeners, because it is possible. I think some people can think, oh, I've had this for so long and I don't know if I can rewire my brain. And you're proof that it can. Your brain learns, it changes, the urges fade away, and you just get to return to just living a normal life.
Oh, for sure. Because if you would have told me this 2 years ago, that I would be in this position right now, I would have said, you are crazy. Because I have tried so many times, and I have failed so many times. I literally thought I would die with it. That's how I felt.
Wow. Were there any sort of unique challenges you had to overcome as you rewired your brain, maybe as far as like your eating or just different things that may have come up during that time?
It's very odd because the urges literally were just lifted. And so I just didn't really have to challenge them much. There was a few times, maybe if I was in the grocery store and if I felt the urge, I treated my urges almost like a little child, and if I heard them, I was like, just get out of the way and let me finish my shopping. And that's kind of how I treated it. And, but I didn't really have it that much. That's what I mean. It's incredible from where I was at to where I am now.
Yeah, I can totally relate. My experience was definitely similar, and it's so possible. And that doesn't mean for other people, it may take longer. There may be challenges. There may be things to kind of sort out along the way. And there may be times that you act on them, but I also want to give people hope that it is also possible just to walk away from it. I love how you described treating your urges as a little child. I heard something the other day that just talked about when you have harmful thoughts, it's almost like a child in the backseat of your car. Like, I hear you, but I'm driving the car,
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like, you're in charge, you're in the driver's seat. So what has it been like since you stopped acting on the urges? How has your life changed and improved?
It's been incredible in the sense that before, 99% of my thoughts were about food. What can I eat? What grocery store do I have to go to today? Because yesterday I went to this grocery store. I was just planning and eating, and that's all my focus was on. Now I can actually engage with other people and really listen. It's increased just being with my family and my friends. Before, I would do everything in my power to isolate myself so I could do my binging. So I would push people away. I would be irritable, so they want to walk away. And I don't have to do that anymore. It's such a phenomenal feeling.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it seems like it's just opened up a lot of mental space, a lot of just ability to connect with people.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's super inspiring. I mean, for everyone listening, it can feel like you're so stuck in it. And I think a lot of times we can make too much of our, wanting to isolate and thinking, oh, something must be wrong with me because I don't want to connect with these people and I want to isolate. But it's really just those urges and those obsessive thoughts that are making you be like that. And once that falls away, you are more open to just living and connecting and just being your authentic self.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Now, is there anything you'd like to share with people as far as people who are stuck in the habit still, people who maybe have struggled a long time, as far as just giving them hope that recovery is possible?
Yeah. Like I said, just kind of, read the book and go back and just go step by step. I literally still go back and I listen to the audiobook still, and I listen to the podcast still. It's like I bathe my brain in it because it keeps it on the top of my head, so I don't let myself fall back into those old thoughts and those old behaviors. But again, it can be done. I mean, obviously, I'm proof of it. So I just want people to know if you're at that point, you can do it.
Absolutely. And how long have you been binge free?
It has been 13 months. Not that I'm counting, but 13 months.
That's amazing. I truly, truly appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and just giving the listeners hope. So thank you so much, Michele.
Well, thank you, Catherine.
Thanks again to these wonderful women for taking the time to be on the podcast. I appreciate it so very much. And I hope they helped you believe that recovery is possible. Michele reached out to me right after her interview and wrote something that I told her I'd share here. She wrote, "One thing I forgot to say, which was huge in my recovery, was the coaching. The summer group coaching program last year is what really got me focused and on my road to recovery. Coach Julie and you were awesome. I know it's too late for the podcast, but I wanted you to know how beneficial it was to me. It really was a game changer." Thanks for adding that, Michele, because getting coaching or getting some form of support is definitely a big part of many people's journeys. It's important to take whatever steps you feel like you uniquely need to get yourself on your own path to recovery, whether that's using my approach by reading Brain Over Binge or starting the Brain Over Binge course or joining group coaching, or whether that's something else like seeking nutritional support or another form of help. The bottom line is that you can learn to make recovery work for you. And if you are interested in the Brain Over Binge resources, you can learn more about them in the show description. There are links there to the new edition of Brain Over Binge on Amazon and Audible. And there's also a link to learn more about the group coaching. Although we're not doing the specific summer group this year that Michele referred to, Coach Julie has ongoing group coaching that you can join anytime, which is so valuable for people. You can learn more about that at brainoverbinge.com/group. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope that after listening to this episode, you feel much more motivated to stop binge eating. And I hope that the recovery stories encouraged you and reminded you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the hosts of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey. Need more help? You can find all of our current and upcoming options for support at brainoverbinge.com.